All right, folks, welcome back to another episode on the Fontana podcast. Tonight we have another special guest and very accomplished special guest. So I'm going to start with his accolades and then bring him in. So he's a multiple time national champion over 800, 1500, cross country and 3000 metres, an All-American in all conference. Also, he is a conference athlete of the year. He is an NCAA champion in the DMR. He's also European under-23 bronze medalist for Great Britain, under-23 British double champion over 1500, 2019 World Championship representative for Great Britain, and also 2019 indoor and outdoor 1500 metre champion. I guess I've gave it away now. It's Mr. Neil Gourley. How are we doing, Neil? How are you getting on?
Doing well, Sean. Yeah, just plugging away over here in the US at the moment, but feel lucky that I'm still training pretty hard and just having to be patient until things look a little bit more optimistic. But yeah, from my point of view, doing well. Lucky to be doing well and plugging away, as I said.
Yeah, for somebody like yourself who is a full-time professional athlete, your job is to train and compete, and basically an important part of your job's been taken away from you just now, and that rightly so, due to the uncertainty in the COVID-19. How yourself, how's the team, how's your coach, how are you guys taking care of basically business while competitions are on hold just now?
Yeah, you're definitely right when you say that. I mean, it is absolutely our job, and I think some of the people tend to be taking the approach, well, if I can't get to the track, if I can't do my usual, then I think I'm going to take a rest just now and wait and see how things play out. But I'm really not, I don't think, talented enough where I can do that, so I'm still kind of going full steam ahead in terms of training. Now this has been an approach that's kind of come from my coach. He's on board with that as well. He's making sure that we just keep things going forward towards trying to make the Olympics next year. That's the biggest goal. So we've just had to stay positive and look at it as a sort of a season where we won't get to compete. We're still going to get to work on the same things. I've been fortunate enough that I'm in the US just now, so I do have access to tracks and what have you. Things have been a little less restrictive in the US, to be fair, and then in the UK, getting access to anything like a gym or a track would be difficult. I've been lucky to, as I said, to have that. But we've been working just as hard as we normally would, and just about when everything was kind of shit was hitting the fan, if you want to put it that way, but things were going south in terms of the global health situation. I was in Flagstaff, and it was just kind of, being at altitude was a completely different stimulus, and we just chose to stick with the plan that we've been going, and we'd stick with the sort of training that we'd set up to do there. The whole point was to be there to get stronger, and I'm not naive enough to think that I'm the finished product in terms of where I'm at aerobically. I need to get better if I want to get anything near world medals. So we're up in Flagstaff trying to do that very thing, and really we've just been trying to pretend that business is as usual in training. I've just kind of put blinders on a bit, and it was good to be in Flagstaff for that 6 weeks to just kind of get a different stimulus, a different perspective on training, and a different challenge. So that was actually kind of refreshing to be there. I think it was timed well, and it got me in good shape where, once you're in that sort of shape, the training gets easier and easier in a sense, to keep going day in and day out.
Yeah. So was that your first stint at altitude?
It wasn't my first. It was my first where I'd done things right.
Right.
I'd been there around the same time last year, actually, for only 4 weeks. This time I did 6 weeks. Anyway, I had 4 weeks there last year, and I just overcooked it a wee bit. I got ill about halfway through, which is it's a familiar story with some people going to altitude for the first time. They just don't quite get it right. Yeah, as I said, I'd overcooked it a wee bit. I was a bit ill, and I came back from there not really in the best of condition, to be honest. So I was a little bit apprehensive, but this time really sort of was careful about the way I was training, and we were smarter about the way we set up the week-to-week training, just adjusted a few things, because we tried to do sort of last year similar stuff we'd do at sea level and just not adjust too much, but we had to adjust the sort of weeks this year, and I think that played out really well and really benefited from it this year.
Yeah. So just a little bit off the topic is, what would you recommend for, so if listeners are, listening and they're maybe looking to go on altitude camp to Flagstaff, Kenya, Fontana, these sort of places. A big thing that you said there was you changed your training a little bit. Was that intensity and volume, or was that both?
No, the intensity was probably still at a similar level. I mean, it's impossible to train at altitude without it being really intense. You find, but I was spreading things out a little bit more. So my coach likes to have quite a lot of quality during the week, whereas there might be a week where we do something Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then a Saturday long run with a tempo in it that might be some sort of quality as well. So there's quite a lot of quality in there, but we just had to reduce that a bit and condense it to the point where we were more, doing a typical week would be hills in the morning on a Tuesday, some sort of strides in the afternoon, then easy running in between times, and then Friday would be a sort of specific kind of track session. I say specific, it was very sort of endurance based, but at least like quality up tempo stuff, and then waiting until Sunday to get a long run, usually with a bit of tempo miles in there as well. But yeah, making sure that it was just kind of 3 real quality sessions a week rather than trying to force too much into one week. Just spreading things out a bit more, which helped a lot, and me just being a bit more careful when it came to the training sessions themselves. It's more about getting that good level of hurt in, but without overdoing it, because you can put yourself in a hole obviously if you do a bit too much.
Like I share a similar experience when I went to my first altitude camp in Kenya. I thought I was going to be able to do everything. I basically thought I was exception to the rule, and go and run sea level paces up at altitude, and as soon as you hit a hill, it's game over. You feel it's just like, what's happening here? But
hills at 7,000 feet are just different.
Also, how's the little cat? How's Skillet? Is that your cat? Is that the team cat? Or?
It's not my cat. That was just my cat while I was in Flagstaff. So I was staying with Sheila Houlihan and Bailey Myers. Sheila's is Shelby's sister.
Mm-hmm.
So Shelby obviously, and Bailey Myers is an 800-meter runner that trains with that Under Armour group up there. So no, they were just my 2 roommates there, and they have a great cat named Skillet who I was messing around with a lot. He's got such a personality. He's a really good-looking cat as well. I think if it wasn't for the fact that he looked so good, he would get away with all the stuff he pulls around the house. It's quite funny. Everybody looks on him so fondly. It's hilarious.
Brilliant. Good. So I feel that when maybe you're at training camp and there is that lot of downtime, having Skillet there would have probably been quite good to keep you and not too bored during all the downtime.
Yeah, it was between Skillet and then Call of Duty Warzone. I was playing a lot of that as well. Something in between sessions to keep your mind off it, because if you're thinking about running all the time, especially at altitude where you don't have many distractions, you can really just overdo it mentally as well.
Yeah,
it's good to just take a back seat and have a glass of red wine or 2 on a Saturday night or something like that. Just something to switch off from running a wee bit.
Yeah, and where did the journey start for you in running? Did you start from football, school? How did you get into running in the first place?
Yeah, it was kind of typical, I suppose, in that I was all about football as a kid. I wasn't that good. I was playing for my team, but I don't think I was ever going to make it anywhere past that. And some of my friends at the time had been sort of scouted for pro youth teams, and that was really exciting to me at the time. Like, imagine getting scouted for a pro youth team. And I'd done, I think, a fun run for Merrilee Primary School, and one of the teachers there, Mrs. Thompson, who I owe a lot to, her husband is Croy Thompson, who coaches at Gift McNaught still, and he's a he's a great chap, and he's known me ever since. But she suggested I go along to Gifford North and give it a try. And it was Claire Stevenson who was taking the sort of under 11s at that point. So I think I was 9 or 10, and I loved the idea of sort of getting scouted at that point, if you want to say. And I went along because I was excited about that, but I actually really liked the sport. I couldn't believe that they were asking you to train 2 nights a week. I thought that was ridiculous at that point. But sure enough, I quite liked the first one, so I kept coming back. And I think within the first week or two, I went up to a race in Battery Park in Greenock that you might know of. You run for Inverclyde, right? You definitely know Battery Park then. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think turned up about 5 minutes before the race, had no concept of a warm-up or whatever, and I happened to win it and not really know what was happening. And from that point, I guess I was just hooked at the prospect of winning races. I think I was just sucked in by that and that only at that point. But I was just wearing like a plain old Nike t-shirt, and lots of people were asking me what club I represented. Like, could they poach me at that point? Like, no, I've committed. I'm very much a Gifford North athlete and all this stuff, as if that was like a big deal. But I was enjoying the attention at the time, and I just rolling with it at that point. I still wasn't very good, but I was getting better, obviously, week by week.
Brilliant. And then you move into your sort of early junior years with the under 17, under 15. The reason I know about like you back as a junior is because one of my best friends, Lee Wilson, used to train with you at Giffnock with Gordon Lockie.
Yep.
And you spoke about it a little bit with Scott McCauley in a Q&A session, and it got me thinking, was this the turning point for you to start really knuckling down and seeing how good can Neil Gourley be? Because you speak about, making plans with your coach to win national titles, and how, basically, I don't want to tell your story without you telling it, but how in your junior years, where did you feel you were? And then with Gordon being your coach, taking you to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky to have Gordon as a coach back then. He took it really seriously, and he had us working pretty hard. And as you say, yeah, Lee was one of my training partners. He was a great guy to get along with. We had a great group of guys when I was sort of age 14 through 17, 18. We had a good group, probably one of the best sort of junior groups in Scotland, I'd say, at that point, where we had guys like Grant Muir and Jack Walker and we Johnny Tweedy at a point as well, and we'd push each other on pretty hard in training. And at first, I think it was all a bit, we had quite a few talented guys, but maybe there wasn't so much of a structure. But Gordon really was taking things seriously and got into doing his research and reading a lot, and he really built up a wealth of knowledge and took on, the advice of people like Tommy Boyle, who'd obviously been and done it with guys like Tom McKee and Yvonne Murray, guys in Scotland that actually really knew what they were talking about and took on knowledge from them. And I, really benefited from having him, absolutely. But personally, I was kind of struggling as a sort of under 15. At that point, I had a bit of an anemia issue, and I just wasn't really enjoying the sport that much, to be honest. I just, I wasn't being that successful anymore as I had been in the under 13 age group, because that was the be all and end all. But at that point, you think it is. You think the inter-districts, you think the national champions, whatever, is the be all and end all. And if I'm not doing well at these, what's the point of doing this? But I think reflecting on it actually the other day, I was thinking the thing that really kept me in the sport was the idea of one day maybe putting on a Scotland vest. I mean, that was, to be honest, at that point, that was my only goal in the sport, was maybe at some point I could represent my country, and that would be brilliant. So stuck at it, and with support of Gordon, who was great, and he brought me on, and it was really just physical development, sort of natural physical developments. I developed pretty late, so it wasn't until I was a sort of under 17 that I started making a few breakthroughs and really started enjoying the sport again. Once that was happening, we started setting higher and higher goals, but I had the work ethic to stick by them. But the one that stands out was sort of a bit of a turning point for me personally was the under-17 cross-country championships, where at the beginning of that season, I don't think many people would have given me a hope of winning that race when it was in February. And we'd sat down in October and decided, yeah, we're going to make a plan to win this thing. And that's, I've had two coaches for a good number of years, and they've both been of the same sort of mentality as we're going to decide that we're going to win this thing. How are we going to do that? And, we sat down and planned out how we were going to progress my training a bit. And we did. And I worked harder than ever, and I was putting in stuff behind the scenes that I'd never done before. And yeah, ended up in February beating a few people that I would never have considered of beating before. Guys like, you probably remember Max Aitchison and Finlay Ray, who were the really talented boys at that time. Russell Mountford as well. So beat those guys and was just absolutely ecstatic that I'd done that I'd accomplished that. And it really sort of changed my mentality on the sport. I really saw firsthand the getting out what you put in kind of thing, which is the beauty of our sport at times. So yeah, that was a big turning point for me in the junior age groups, and sort of kicked on from there in terms of my approach to sport, my mentality, what have you.
Yeah, because going back to that, I used to train a little bit with Max Aitchison and Lewis Boyle, and those two were like the wonder kids of Scottish athletics at that level, winning Scottish medals and things. And to see you, surpass them it's incredible. It was incredible to watch. It just shows that, you've mentioned a few times that you don't think that you're talented, and I don't think a lot of people listening to this don't believe it. I mean, I think talent lies in many, many forms, whether it's mental, whether it's physical.
No, you're right.
But you're a talented boy, whether you don't, fully believe that.
Yeah, no. I know where my talents lie. I'm not naive enough to think that I've not got some talent. There's absolutely talent there, and it's in certain ways as well. There's sort of, different ways you can be talented in terms of durability and, mentally. And yeah, I just maybe not as talented as some.
Like, I respect that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
In the fact that one of them may lie in the fact that you can believe in a program, stick to a program, and listen to your coach and believe in what they're giving you, and do it to the book, and don't allow you keep like you're talking about, the blinkers on, and you just go full pelt at it, and you believe in it, you buy in, and you trust. So I think,
absolutely.
I think a lot of athletes, especially as we get older, and we see social media and we see, Strava and all this social media shit that sidetracks us from maybe what we're doing. You're not allowing that to sidetrack you. You're keeping focused on you're keeping your eye on the prize.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's something that I've always been good at in training. Is just never really bothering what other people are doing, never really bothering comparing myself in anything other than when it counts, when you're racing. I mean, when that happens, but I'm pretty blooming competitive guy, and I hate losing, but everything else is sort of peripheral. Everything else is just, what can I do to get better? And it's all relative, because what makes some people better will not work for other people. I've found something at the moment, training wise, that is absolutely working for me, and there are people that wouldn't work for. But I know where I've been, I know where I'm trying to get to, and I know the sort of intermediate steps if I've had enough experience in this sort of program. So it's just about, focusing exactly on what you can control, and don't worry about what other people are doing in training, because really it doesn't matter. And you learn that more and more. There are plenty of people that have taken it to me in training sessions, but that's not how it ends up on race day. So you just need to forget and lose all sense of I've got something to prove, because you really don't until the gun goes off on race day.
Yeah, and that leads me to, I've just finished a book called Ego is the Enemy.
All right.
Yeah, and I've allowed certain athletes to take me out of my game, because your ego sometimes gets the better of you. You want to fluff your chest up and try and be macho, but sometimes it doesn't sort of end the way you want it to.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for it. I mean, when it comes to race day, nobody is my friend, but yeah, ego does come into it, of course, especially when you've got people that you race so often, people that you've got past experience with. It comes into it. It's just if you can compartmentalize it and bring it out on race day, I think generally that's the way I've had success, and that's the way I see it. Other people having success with it.
Brilliant. And then we move on to 2013. You're establishing yourself as one of the strongest athletes in your age group, and then you're looking to move over to university in America. Did you get scouted? As you say, you get those letters, you get those emails, coaches asking you to come out, or did you go and sort of deliver yourself to the universities? Did you ask to, for a scholarship?
I'd had one or two sort of messages, emails in, but nothing major really, nothing I was particularly interested in. It was definitely me making the sort of first moves. Mm-hmm. I'd taken a gap year at that time after sixth year in school, in high school, and I was working a sort of internship, a sort of engineering job, because that's what I wanted to get into was engineering. Wasn't particularly enjoying it at the time, but I was plugging away doing it, and I was using that year to hopefully get a year better, but also mainly to email sort of college coaches, NCAA sort of systems, programs rather. And yeah, I think I had a list of 20 odd schools. I'd done my research that I thought might suit, both with the academic side of things and the athletic side of things, and kept narrowing it down as to which coaches get back to me, which didn't. There were plenty that did not reply. I had solid PBs at that time, nothing that was crazy. I think I'd run 350 for 1500 and 152 for 800. So decent, compared to American high scores, but nothing that would stand out and make some of these bigger schools turn their heads really. So got talking with quite a lot of schools, but the uni that I ended up going to, I wasn't even on my radar at first. It was actually a coworker who happened to mention to me at the time, just in passing. He said, "Oh, have you looked into this school, Virginia Tech?" I said, "No, I don't think so," because they'd had good relationships with Strathclyde, and they had lots of exchange students go back and forth just for engineering side of things. I thought, oh no, that sounds like a geeky engineering school. I bet they don't have like a sports program or anything like that. And here, 7 years later, owing everything to that school. So I emailed the coach, Ben Thomas, who's still my coach to this day, at the time, and he got back to me quickly and was really interested, and got talking about coming out to visit really soon. I just liked how intrigued he was by me as an athlete, but also just what he had to say about training. We shared the same sort of, I was starting to build up my own sort of philosophies, I suppose, about training and recovery and the importance of certain aspects of training, that kind of thing. So he was just giving me the right answers to the questions I had, and I just sort of immediately had a bit of trust in him and a bit of belief in him. And it was also the track record of his athletes. He had a lot of people come onto the team who weren't great, to be honest. They're way behind me and become all Americans, great athletes, conference champions, whatever it is. By the time they left, there was a guy I like to use an example, was like Michael Hammond. He ended up making a US final, and he came onto the team with like a 4:15 mile PB or something like that. I ended up running like 3:39 and being a really good athlete by the time he left. These kind of guys. So yeah, it served as good examples for what this coach could do with me. Given a bit of time, and it was the best decision I made. Really, was to commit to Virginia Tech, and yeah, as I said, Ben Thomas is still my coach today. He got the job just 2 years ago with the University of Oregon. So while I'm over there as part of the OTC setup, Coach Thomas is still giving me my day-to-day stuff, and he's just been brilliant and improving me as an athlete, of course, but also just mentally as well. He's got a way of motivating people and instilling a certain sort of confidence and sort of steely determination that is sort of trademark of a lot of his athletes, I find. So he certainly improved up here, sort of mentally, just as much as anything else. I think I became a much tougher athlete when I started working with him.
That's amazing, and because I was kind of wondering there how Ben was still your coach if you moved to OTB, and then you're saying he's moved to the.
So he's in Eugene now, yeah.
That's brilliant, and you spoke in the Q&A that a couple of you guys are still together that trained at Virginia Tech that are pro.
It's quite wild looking back at the way my class developed. So the sort of group of people that came on at that year, 2013, we all came to Virginia Tech, and so one of them is Hannah Green, who's working with Mark Rowland now in Eugene, but is a teammate out of OTC just now. So Hannah's, a 158 800 meter runner. She Paris Diamond League winner last year, and she was primed to sort of she was in medal shape, I would say, but pulled her hamstring right before World Championships, unfortunately. But she's someone who's come on a lot. Drew Piazza, who's a 145 800 meter runner, someone I've trained with a heck of a lot. He was on the OTC setup. Vince Ciatti, he's still sort of working. He's working with Mark Rowland now at OTC as well. It's just crazy the connection that we've established between Virginia Tech and OTC. But he was second at NCAA his senior year at Virginia Tech. So, and he's a 339 guy, but actually much better than that. And you're going to see that soon, I would imagine. He's just sort of gotten fully healthy and fit again. He's another gun. And then Patrick Joseph as well, who trained sort of with the Tin Man group in Boulder, Colorado as well. He's a sub 340 guy and a 145 or 146 800 meter runner. It's just a ridiculous group looking back. To have all come in as decent runners at that point in time, but nothing crazy. We're all still doing this as a job, which is quite incredible looking back.
As I'm listening to this, not only are you fulfilling your dreams as athletes through college into being professionals, but it seems like you've also helped Ben with his dreams of coaching, these top athletes in the world as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say he's given more to than we have to him, but I wouldn't dispute the fact that I think he's learned a lot working with us, and also, we were a sort of good group that changed the culture just a wee bit at Virginia Tech as well. Just we were all pretty focused, and we got the younger people that came in after us to be pretty focused as well, and we changed the program a wee bit in terms of the level of focus and the sort of desire to win, which desire to win had already been there, but to be honest, that was easy when you had Ben as our coach anyway. He was just instilling that in us, and he's a guy that's very passionate about winning, about performing, and it's not so much that he'd get angry at you if you don't do what he says. It's more just you feel like you've let him down if you haven't, because he puts so much sort of trust in you, and he is intense about winning and performing, but it's not to the point where you feel like he's attacking you. It's more just like he's intensely getting behind you, so you just don't feel like you want to let him down. Mm-hmm. And he's someone who puts people of the mindset that it's not like, if things go right, then maybe I can win today. It's not even considering the alternative. It's the complete opposite. It's just, I'm not going to not win today, so I don't see the point of thinking about the alternative. He just instills absolute. When he talks at the start of the season, it will just be like, we're gonna, unless someone falls in the race, we're gonna win that one. Mm-hmm. We're gonna take care of this. We're gonna take care of this time. We're gonna take care of X, Y, and Z. It's just an absolute. He deals with certainties. And the chips fall where they may. You don't always live up to it, but he's someone that psychologically is expecting a lot of you, but you don't feel under pressure exactly to do it. It's just you start to expect the same yourself.
Mm-hmm. I like that. He seems very sure And if when a coach is sure
Yeah.
of himself and sure of the results and the progress he's going to give you, you'll then you buy in, you get that confidence, and you become sure of yourself as an athlete.
Absolutely, yeah. And he's very meticulous. He sort of lays everything out just so, to the point where, you know, other people look at our training and go, what does that even mean? Why do you need to do all that? I think there's a method in just being so particular that it forces you to follow things to the letter. And it just sort of, it breeds a culture of, you know, doing things right all the time, rather than sort of, you know, messing about when things get serious.
Yeah. And then as you go through your university this experience, what would you say, every team has sort of like their staple workout? You know, there's when I was at Grand Valley, it was something called Rojo, which was, you know, a mile, then a 2K tempo, a mile fast, 2K tempo, 1200 fast, 2K tempo, 800 fast, 2K tempo, 600 fast, 2K tempo. That was sort of like you would get up at like 5 in the morning and do this workout at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Music would be blaring, and just the whole, everybody's like, you know, cross country season is on. Like, what was your sort of your team workout where you would lick your chops and be like, oh right, this isn't a program today?
Well, first of all, that sounds brutal. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got a few. I mean, in the cross country season, I don't think there was anything that really stuck out as such. We kind of stuck to the basics. It was all like tempos, hills, you know, some longer intervals. There wasn't any one thing that stood out. But I think when it gets towards the track, there are some things you look at on the calendar and think, oh, okay, that's coming up. One of them that I like, that is, you know, one of my favorites is a 300 cut down workout, where you'll do a couple of sets of 300s with maybe 2 or 3 minutes in between, and the 300s aren't even pace. So you'll do the first 100 of the 300 at 14, the second 100 at 13, the last 100 at 12. And it's just all about, you know, you get a good, you know, anaerobic stimulus out of the 300s themselves, but the real challenge of that workout is obviously changing gears, and it's a skill that we practice, I think, way more than most other groups I've ever seen. Is not many of our reps are just one thing. You know, you're looking for a certain pace, whether it be, you know, 38-second 300s or whatever. It's more like, how can we run this while cutting down, which simulates more what happens in a race situation anyway. So it's a skill that we practice a lot. And, you know, another one we'll have is it's like a 1K, a 600, a 1K, a 600, and, you know, the paces of those reps seem quite hard enough, but they're much, you know, you get a few minutes jogging between them, but they're much harder when you do them the way we do them, which is, for the 1K, usually we start at 13 seconds for 100, then we go 30 seconds for 200, and then we slow right down, as a 1500 often does. 67 for a 400, so that takes you through 700 meters. Yeah, and then you sort of mirror how you started. You go 29, 30 or around there for 200, and then 13 for the last 100 again. So you're going out hard and you're finishing hard as well. It's just stuff that simulates what actually happens in a race, more than just, you know, sitting behind a pacer and clicking off splits. So as it gets to the business end of the season, that tends to be more how our training looks. Just lots of different, really specific, oddly specific paces that we need to hit. A lot of people look at our training and go, "Well, why are they being so specific?" But it's worth the attention to detail, I think, if you add up all these 1% over time. But yeah, back to my point. I mean, the changing of pace is really, I think, what sometimes sets his training apart, perhaps when it comes to race day, than others.
That's actually very oddly unique. And then you're thinking, you can't switch off during that. You can't switch off. That is spot on. Like, where you are so alert that whatever's you're very in tune with what's happening within those. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. That is really cool. What would you say some of your career highlights were at Virginia?
Well, I mean, first of all, the number one definitely had to be the very last race I had for Virginia Tech. I mean, it was the NCAA DMR. we, as a class, were very, like, I explained earlier, we had a lot of good guys and we got a lot better at Virginia Tech, but that sort of national title had eluded us and none of us had one. But we were determined at that point, like we weren't going to graduate without one. So we decided to put sort of all our eggs in one basket in a sense, and load up this DMR, despite the fact that we'd had heats of three of us had heats of the mile that same day. But we decided that after the heats of the mile, we would decide, do we go all in on this or do we not? And we all came back thinking, yeah, we all still feel good. Let's do this. And it was just absolutely special to share it with two other roommates that I'd been living with for the last 5 years. And we've been so close, and we'd always kind of thought we were of the level where we'd accomplished that, but hadn't yet. And it was just a case of, just being so special to share it with them, because an individual title would have been great. I think I was close to the level where I could have done that, but never did. But to have that team, I think I don't regret anything about making that decision of trying to go for the team thing. That was absolutely the right call, and something I'll never forget, because you get as much individual sort of chances to do well as you want in the sport, but as a team it's few and far between. So that was probably my favorite memory right there, sharing it with those guys.
Yeah. And especially when you're talking about a team of distance runners, being able to share an experience is very like, sprinters get to share that, with the sprint.
Sure.
But that's quite a cool experience to be able to share that with your teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish there were more sort of distance relays going on at the moment. I mean, I know the World Relays had them before. I wish, Team GB got behind that and sent athletes. I wish that there were sort of distance relays. I don't understand why there can't be, especially at World Championships. There really should be that kind of thing, because it's always entertaining, and I think people would really buy into it, particularly if it was held sort of at the end of an athletics fixture at the end of a World Championship, so that kind of thing. And being selfish and excited about the thing, I think, as a Scottish or British team just now, I think we'd be in with a good chance of medals and that kind of thing at the moment.
Yeah, and I think a lot of British athletes and maybe European athletes don't. When we talk about distance medley relay, they think, it seems too complicated. But see, when you're in NCAA and you actually hear the noise every single team makes, that would be electric if that was your country, not just your school.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, imagine that at the Olympics, and you're really getting behind your country, and it's just this wild race where there's different speeds going on, and the 400 is electric, but then it slows back down and it gets tense as the mile leg happens. Yeah, it would be brilliant.
And so we move on to the 2018 season. Where you're looking to really start making your mark as a top senior athlete in the UK, and you're gearing up for the races, you're gearing up for the trials, you're gearing up to represent Britain at the European Championships. You've hit the times, you come third in the trials, you've done everything that was asked for you through selection. Take us through how you felt during that process, because of all the successes you've had as an athlete, there's some things that can sometimes derail an athlete from their focus and their sport, and those little upsets can sort of trickle into other seasons. But you come third at the trials, don't get selected. How are you feeling? How are you thinking during that time?
Well, I mean, immediately finding out not getting selected, pretty pissed off. Absolutely. I mean, it was pretty raw at first. I felt, cheated and hard done by and all the rest of it. I felt that, while I hadn't done enough to be automatically selected, I'd proven through sort of championship performances that I was ready to perform at that level, and it wasn't just like a one-off thing. It was the British athletic selectors didn't feel I was ready, despite the fact that I'd had a good track record at the British Championships recently, in championship settings. Didn't have a quick enough PB on paper, clearly. And there was some stuff sort of going on behind the scenes at that point where it made it that I didn't really get a chance to back up the performance that I'd put in at the British Championships. Despite running big PBs and what have you, it just wasn't seen as enough. But I could go into that aspect of it for a while, but the most important thing to take out of it wasn't all the frustration and perhaps the politics and the bullshit, quite frankly, that was going on behind the scenes. The most important part of that was that it sort of changed me mentally to be a wee bit less, a wee bit less easygoing. I wasn't gonna be anything but ruthless in the future. There was just no way that I was letting that happen again because of the way I felt afterwards. I just, as I said in 2018, I wasn't going to let that happen again. And sure enough, a year later, the selection was taken out of the selector's hands, or the decision to have me on the team or not was out of the selector's hands. I'd done enough to make sure that wasn't even a question. But in the intermediate times, it was such a fuel to the fire. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche for athletics at this point, like the things that fuel your fire. But it was. I mean, any time that I was thinking, oh, should I go to bed earlier tonight? Should I do this extra bit of sort of rehab exercise that I'm doing just now? It's so much easier to do when that the margins are so fine, and you're just not going to get the benefit of the doubt if you don't end up on the right side of it. You're just not. I was consigned to the fact that I was never going to get help by the powers that be, if you want to call it that, again. And I was quite happy with that. There was a sort of freedom in that coming into 2019 where I knew it was do or die. If I was third, fine, I can sit at home and watch the World Championships, or do I get top two and then not have to worry about it? So there was a certain freedom in that. Just there was no ambiguity. After 2018, I felt, and it turned over a different sort of side of me where I was a wee bit angrier, a wee bit more raw emotionally. But sometimes you need that as an athlete, and you see that with other athletes. It's disappointments that really that propel them forward. I was listening to something about Andy Robertson this morning, talking about how hard the Champions League final was for them when they lost the year prior to them beating Spurs recently, and how the reason that they performed so well that year later was how raw the emotions were afterwards. They remembered exactly how deep that cut, and sometimes that's just as important as an athlete to go through. So yeah, it was an incredible disappointment, but long term, I'm thankful almost that it happened. It happened at the right time for me.
So you've turned that negative scenario, and you've turned it into a positive to really just create that raw fuel to the fire, that raw emotion to be like, this ain't happening again, boys. I'm gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it, because then with that happening 2 weeks later, you get selected for GB to run at the Athletics World Cup in the London Stadium, and I was there that night watching your race, and it was phenomenal. Like I was roaring. I lost my voice, like screaming. Basically, London Stadium, wearing a GB vest. How was it? How was that? How was that?
I mean, it's fantastic. It's something that I had to try not to take for granted at the time, because, as I said, it just did come up rather quickly and sort of abruptly that I was going to get this opportunity. And yeah, I mean, it had been a dream to compete for my country at a senior level since I was pretty young. It's weird to try not to let these things pass you by, particularly when you're in the middle of a busy season and you have to actually focus on the next thing and the next thing. But yeah, looking back, it was pretty special, and I had my parents there and a couple of friends based in London that were able to come see it, and it's a wee bit surreal connecting those two worlds together when you see your parents afterwards and you've just competed in that stadium and you look out and you think, I mean, that can't have been real. But I still get that. I still get that wherever I go. If it's a sort of a big occasion, just seeing people afterwards and thinking, I was out there. I was doing that. It still doesn't seem right. It's almost that sort of imposter syndrome thing where, you know, looking back as a kid, I'd never have believed you. So yeah, I do try, while I've got this sort of steely, like headstrong approach, or I'm not going to let people beat me, that kind of thing. You do also have to step back and look at it from a sort of young fan's perspective, a young person that loves this sport. Think, shit, that's pretty cool that I was able to do that. So, you know, I do take a step back every now and again and think that, and that was one of those occasions.
Yeah. And how was the noise in the stadium as well as you were competing? Did that like get your heart pounding, or were you still quite, you know, you're in the zone, were you quite focused? But, you know, hearing the fans coming around 200 metres to go and you're sprinting to the line, like, you know, hearing that roar from the crowd.
You know, it's funny, I only realised after the race that roar that was happening as I was sort of coming around 100 metres to go was actually for me. Never even crossed my mind at the time. It's only afterwards I realised, oh yeah, they were willing me on to catch Marcin Lewandowski, which we'll have to wait. It's pretty damn quick. I was actually quite disappointed with that race. I thought I ran it a wee bit stupidly, but the result possibly wouldn't have been much different back then. I don't have the wheels. Certainly didn't at that point to catch Marcin Lewandowski, and certainly not giving him a jump like I did. So I actually learned a good bit from that race. But yeah, as I said, having people cheer for you that don't know you, that they're just there supporting their country is quite special. And it was, as I said, surreal at the time because it didn't even register for me until afterwards I realised that roar was for me.
That's really cool. Like I just, you know, for me personally, for me to either see yourself, Chris O'Hare, or Andy Butchart, Charlie Grice as well. What from a Scottish perspective, you know, yourself, Chris O'Hare and Andy, because I've seen you guys, well, personally, you know, I've built a good relationship up with Chris O'Hare. I've been in training camps with Butchie, and I've seen you through the age groups competing, you know, year by year, seeing you like get better and better in Scotland, and then seeing you boys like wear those GB vests out in packed stadiums. It's just like, I even turn around to my wife and I go, that's last year, like at the Scottish Champs, like that's him. But she's like, oh wow, you know. So you know, it's I can't. It fills me with joy, and it also fills me with hope that hopefully, you know, one day when I'm seeing you guys do it, that maybe, you know, maybe one day I can be wearing one of them, because you know you look at it and go, these guys are just normal guys. You know, they come up and shake your hand, ask you how you're doing, and you're just like, one day, hopefully, you know. So I think it's really cool that you guys are, you know, doing so well and doing your thing for GB. It's been inspiring for me, if you know, and a lot. Scottish athletics is in such a great place just now. It's unbelievable. And that moves us on to 2019, your year, I would say. And I've actually got it there, the year with an exclamation mark. The 24th of January, you officially signed for OTC. And well, I was actually, before I knew that, you know, you didn't go with Mark Rowland, you're still with Ben. I was actually going to say, you know, as a question here, how's your training changed from Virginia Tech to OTC? But I'm thinking it's not. You're on a, you know, you're just on an upward trajectory with Ben. And then,
it's changed a bit. Things have just gotten a bit harder. It's just progressed, but it's a system that I just didn't want. It's a sort of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And I was absolutely of the opinion that, you know, this was a setup that was working for me. I was still getting better every year, and I figured if I'm going to keep getting better every year, that's all I can really ask for. And it's absolutely nothing against Mark Rowland in particular. He's a great coach, and I get to watch him operate with some of the other guys like Hannah and what have you, and he's brilliant. I just wanted to stick with what had been working at the moment, and he'd been very generous to allow me to sort of come in under that setup, but still kind of allow me to be coached by Ben. So as I said, training not changed a heck of a lot, but running with some guys at the Oregon team actually, that are very strong and have pushed me on a bit, and getting to see how the OTC guys operate as well, just some new perspectives on training and different things, and being introduced to a physio like David Campbell as well, who works with OTC, just introduced bits and pieces that have just helped keep me staying healthy and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So me and David, I don't know if he's told you this. I don't know if you mentioned that you're going to come on the podcast, but me and David know each other quite well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. David seems to have got around in the past. He seems to know everybody from the athletics world. But go on.
He used to be the physio for MTC as well, Melbourne Track Club, and they used to come down. They came over to Teddington and based there. And Andy Vernon and myself. Andy was part of MTC. I was just the sort of the fanboy that would tag along with them and run in Bushy Park with them. And Dave would massage me. I'd pay him 50 quid for a massage and stuff. And he used to like rub up and down my quads, and I'd almost have tears in my eyes, and like my face would go purple. He's like, that's your fault, Sean. That's your fault. Not taking it. So, he's such an amazing guy, full of stories, and I mean, Irish, full of stories.
It's whenever you go to see him, it's almost not just sort of physical therapy. It's almost like you just get someone to chat to for the next hour and just unload to, because he's been in your positions before, and he's brilliant at sort of it's almost like mental sort of therapy as well. Just being able to chat and unload and talk shit and banter to him for an hour is just as useful as anything as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then like, if you think about this, Neil, like you're part of such an like a pivotal club in history. Like my role model, somebody who I've always wanted to be in my entire life, is Steve Prefontaine. Oregon Track Club is monumental to it's like kids' dreams, that, and you're putting on that green singlet. Like, how does it feel being a part of such a prestigious, well-oiled machine?
It's quite funny actually, because when I was looking at coming to the NCAA as a sort of late teenager, that was at the time I think Nick Simmons was sort of in his prime, that kind of thing, and that was the dream basically, was run for a setup like that. It's surreal looking back to the fact that I thought that was a million miles away. Like, that was the absolutely pinnacle dream scenario. But it ended up sort of playing out, and it's something that is you've got to not take for granted now, because it's so easy to do so, because it's just part of your life now, it's part of what you do. But yeah, as I said, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where you've got these opportunities in front of you, like running the Olympic Stadium. You've got to occasionally think, oh, this is pretty cool. And or run for OTC is definitely one of those things. It's such a rich sort of history. It's great sort of knowing that, in a sense, that you're going to need to do something pretty special to leave a legacy on that kind of club. And I quite like that, being a small fish in a big pond and trying to grow. And that's what I suppose I'm trying to do as part of the OTC setup, is at some point maybe hopefully make a bit of a splash, but the bar has been set so high for that.
Yeah, I just, it is amazing. It's amazing. It's a childhood dream for me, and to see you live that, and ask you the question, like, how does it feel to, like, you also, you're basically living your dream through your eyes open, which is something some people don't get to do that. So it must be such a fulfilling thing to do. And I think maybe sometimes it seems like you are very humble in your approach to athletics, because you talking about working harder because of maybe thinking of the lack of talent and things. Like, I feel that you might not actually understand how it feels from the outside perspective to think like this great opportunity, and it's almost as a celebrity in athletics, as you could say. It's the pinnacle of where people would love to reach. Oregon Track Club, professional athlete, is most people's pinnacle of that is a dream, and you're living it. Sometimes we need to take a step back and go, actually, aye, that's me.
No, it's nice and refreshing to hear that, because I was absolutely, for the longest time in the exact same position where I was thinking, oh, that would be so cool. And these days, yeah, of course I'm taking it a bit for granted, because it's become part of life for me, I suppose. But yeah, no, it's it's strange to think, looking back, as a kid, thinking, oh, maybe, if the stars absolutely align. I think, remember, the stars do seem to have aligned. Because yeah, if I was anywhere else in life at the moment, I'd be looking at these kind of people exactly the same way. Like, oh, that would be so cool. And I still think it absolutely is. It's still surreal, as I said, in a sense. But I've always had the mentality of trying to always focus on the next thing. Taking a step back is important too.
Yeah, no, you've done well, and you kick off the 2019 indoor season, becoming British indoor champion. I'm guessing 2018. You are motivated. You are disciplined. You are looking for redemption in every way, shape, or form, and you come out all guns blazing, British champion, stand on the podium. I guess, I think as a Scottish athlete standing on the British podium, I think there's always a sense of, all the way through junior into senior, I feel like you're always competing. I know that it's, Britain as a whole, but it's something special about standing on the podium. You're representing Britain, but you're also representing Scotland. How did it feel, your first senior British medal? How was that?
Yeah, brilliant for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned, but it sounds almost, the way I'm talking about 2018 is, it was like, I need to prove these doubters wrong. These people were wrong about me in 2018, which is, to an extent is true, but I just don't think in training it's as powerful as the people that were with me during that disappointment, proving them right.
Mm-hmm.
There were people around me, my parents, my coach and whatever, that, were right there in my corner and have been since a young age, and have afforded me great opportunities, and I feel like I need to pay them back in whatever way possible. And it's about proving them right, I think, is much stronger than proving doubters wrong. Exactly. So in 2019, when I was getting my first taste of, bouncing back from that 2018 disappointment, it was just an absolute joy to see the people that had been with me during those sort of more difficult, more frustrating times, proving them right. It was just as special as it gets, and that's all I was really thinking about when I was on the podium. Yeah, it was great to get that medal and what have you, and the individual honors are very cool. But it just, I don't know, in early 2019, it just wasn't about me really. It was just about vindicating all the support they'd given me through that time, and that was everything to me at that point.
And then Glasgow European Championships. Again, I was there, and that was, the noise was unreal. Like, just senior vest again, GB, Glasgow, indoors, feeling the noise, feeling the roar from the crowd. How was your experience of Glasgow?
I mean, the most brilliant thing ever on the the first day of competition, when I was competing in my heat. I'd invited a lot of my old sort of coaches and sort of mentors at Giffnock North and that kind of people. I made sure they get tickets and they were all there watching, and it was absolutely special to make that final and be feeling as good racing as I did, racing as confidently as I was. And yeah, special that Friday was the morning or the afternoon of the heat. Mm-hmm. And feeling as good or better than I'd ever done in that heat as well. I think feeling good about my chances of getting a medal in the final on the Sunday. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it went from the best experience of my life to probably in terms of my athletic career, probably the most disappointing. I mean, it absolutely dwarfs the 2018 disappointment, to be honest, just because it was in Glasgow, it was in my hometown, and I woke up on the Sunday morning and didn't feel quite right. Sort of tried to go out for my morning jog and made it about 100 meters down the road. I was like, oh, shit, I've got to at least throw up here or something. Something's not right. But it's the morning at that point. You think, by 8 o'clock I'll be all right. I've dealt with race day weirdness before. I'm sure it'll be fine. Just something I ate maybe. And things got worse and worse from there. Unfortunately, I was in my bed and I was shivering and I was getting chills, and my resting heart rate was up at about 90 to 100, just sitting there on my sitting there in bed at that point in time. And I couldn't get warm no matter how much clothes I put on. So I'd come down with something. And it unfortunately just got worse as the day went on. Called up the doc, British Athletics, and he was saying, don't come to the track if you're in that sort of state. And I got at that point the supporting coach Craig Winrow, at that stage he was the supporting coach for the middle distances, and I got him to talk to the doc and said, look, at least let him warm up. So I tried. I came to the venue feeling like a zombie. Hadn't really eaten anything that day. I tried to force some things in, but they weren't really staying down, shall we say. And tried to warm up, and I was dizzy as soon as I did a first stride. It just wasn't going to happen that night. So, but I had to at least try. I had to because I'd have to live with that knowledge of what if I'd gone there, warmed up, and felt okay. So I tried, and we were about 30 minutes from race time, and I just sort of broke down in tears. I think it was Craig who was there at the time, who I know Craig a wee bit from training in the past, but he could just get everything he needed to know from having watched me try to compete. He just knew how important it was to me, having been an athlete himself as well, and he was great about trying to put some perspective on things and trying to help me out with it. But absolutely broke down at that. I don't think I've ever been so emotional about my sport as I was then in Glasgow, just because if I'd been anywhere else in the world, there are other races coming, but you don't know if you'll ever get a chance to compete in your home city again. And that was just quite special to me. So it was as upsetting as it got, and having to go home that night and finding out the result later and that kind of thing. It was just, as I said, really upsetting, and much more upsetting than sort of 2018 had been at all. That was a whole frustration thing. This was just like, as I said, just on a personal level, just hard to take because of the people that were in the crowd there supporting me, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It just absolutely a dream come true to have competed in that final. But it's another one where, as much as I did dwell on it for the next couple of weeks, it just had to be, this was a different lesson of, well, you might not get that many opportunities in your career. There might, you could have a catastrophic injury in a few years, and it's morbid to say, but you might not be this good in a few years. You might struggle. You might not get this many opportunities. So any that are going to come your way, you're going to have to take advantage of, and you're never going to take an opportunity for granted again. And that's definitely the lesson I learned that weekend. I picked up some sort of stomach bug, God knows what it was, but I was taken for granted competing in that final, and it sort of got taken away. So I've never sort of take for granted an opportunity again after that one. So it was sort of, as I said, sort of went from the best experience in my athletic career to probably the worst, but again, I had to take lessons from it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually a bit moved that you shared that there, and it also brings things back into perspective where I think a lot of club athletes and sub-elite athletes look at an elite athlete like yourself, or Bucci or O'Hare or Whiteman or Gracie or whoever it is, and they look up and they go, they all think the grass is greener. They all think that you've got this smooth ride and it's smooth sailing, and the injuries only happen to us, and the illnesses only happen to us, and why me? And to hear that story, and just to allow the listeners to, because all abilities listen to this podcast, that this is part and parcel of the game, and you can't take them personally. The best of us get them, no matter who you are. We're human beings at the end of the day. We're not Terminators. I'm actually really, I'm really happy that you shared that story there, like that honest truth, where I hope a lot of people who are listening to this will actually, maybe take a step back from their pity party that they might be going through just now, if they're, through lockdown, or why lockdown, or, why me, why this, like, it happens to the best of us, and we need to, again, like you said, you go through, Dave Brailsford puts it, you go through a mini grieving process, just a mini grieving process, and you deal with it the way you want to deal with it, but eventually then you've got to kick yourself up the arse and then get back to work. You can't allow that to sort of consume you and, basically beat you. And you've shown, you've shown now time and time again that with adversity just makes you stronger. We move into the outdoor season in 2019, we've got the trials in 2019. It's the 1500 metre start line the depth is unbelievable at this point. In 2019, it's an era of sort of the Seb Coe, Steve Cram, Steve Ovett, Graham Williamson, John Robson, all these, like, people probably don't even know who Williamson and Robson are because of how good the other three were. But you've got these great athletes. You get James West, you've got yourself, James West, your training partner. You've got Josh Kerr, Jake Whiteman, Charlie Grice, Chris O'Hare. You get 6 athletes competing for 3 spots that are all within, a blanket of each other, and you're all going toe to toe in the 1500 final to go to Worlds. I'm not going to give out anything away. I want you to talk to me about, how you were basically. I think you've answered it many times through the podcast, but how were you able to prepare your mind, stay focused and stay calm before this big event, before the storm? Talk us through, your warm-up, the race. How were you feeling? What was going through your mind?
Race day generally is what I look forward to. The sort of day-to-day training, I wouldn't say it's a chore exactly. It's my job. It's what I get to do. But if there's anything I look forward to in this sport, it's absolutely race day. I think I'm a wee bit different than most that actually quite like when everything's on the line. That's when I get nervous. That's when I get some adrenaline going. When it's maybe a time trial type race and there's maybe something, early season, you're just trying to run a PB, that kind of thing. It doesn't really get my heart racing, to be honest. But when the pressure's on like that and it's do or die, that's when, I feel quite alive in this sport, and it's why I keep doing it. And yeah, sure, it feels uncomfortable, in that few hours in the morning, you're sitting eating your breakfast and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got a big challenge ahead of me today. But it's, once you start getting into your routines for a race day, it becomes so exciting for me. And especially when you start to see people around you sort of really look nervous, that I feed off that a lot. But yeah, I really enjoyed that day for some reason. I'd told my parents a week or two prior. I started feeling really good in training. Things were really starting to click, and it was out of nowhere almost, because in the month prior I'd gone through a bit of a rough patch, but I think I'd just been training a wee bit too hard, and maybe had a wee bit of an iron issue that I sort of took care of quite quickly. But in the few weeks leading in, I was like, I think I'm going to win the British Championships. I think they're not going to see me coming. I think the style of race that plays out, it's going to be very tough to do, but I think I'm going to win because they're not going to see me coming. I don't think anyone was really expecting the performance that I put in that day to come out. And I was also just, from the disappointment of last year, but also early in 2019 in Glasgow, just absolutely determined that it was going to be top 2, or you can forget about it. I could have been 3rd or 12th apart from being in that top 2. So as the way I'd planned out the race, the way I thought it was going to go, it's just one of those sort of rare occasions actually where it went exactly as I thought. As much as you can plan, generally your race plan goes to shit halfway through the race, but that day it didn't. And I was on the shoulder of the leader. That was exactly where I planned to be, either on the shoulder or leading the race. I was quite happy to lead and just sort of run, fairly slow laps, nothing too slow to make it just completely ridiculous. But at least to the point where I'd be very comfortable at that, and I'd be able to be the first one to react to a move. But anyway, I was on the shoulder of the leader, and I knew Josh would be the first one to move because he likes to go at 600 to go. He sort of makes no secret of that, and he'd had success doing that this season. I also knew that there were one or two people like him, like Jake, like Charlie, who I'd be okay with getting stuck behind because of the shape that they were in. I mean, Josh was someone I'd identified really as the person to ideally be stuck behind. So when Josh made his move, the idea was just to be right behind him and not worry about the people panicking on my outside, because he'd be flying all the way to the line, I was pretty sure, and the gaps would open up if I was just patient enough. So sure enough, he goes with 600 to go, and I get right in behind him because I have the ability to do that because I'm right at the front anyway. I react to his move sitting behind him, and really just bide my time and be efficient for the last 400. I mean, I think we ran the last lap in 51 mid, something like that, the last 300 in like 37, something like that. But you only do that if you've sort of run efficiently to that point, and being in lane one that whole lap, just being able to sit and sit and sit and then close the last 224, I think, was just because I'd been so efficient in following Josh, and just wasting no extra energy. And you know, having done those 300 cut downs at 14, 13, 12, that is exactly what I was sort of thinking, going that last 200. Let's just accelerate coming off the last 100, and a gap will open up here. No, I was a little fortunate that Josh sort of swung wide. And sure enough, what I'd been saying to my parents 2 weeks earlier, they're not going to see me coming. Clearly, Josh didn't. He swung wide, and I came through on the inside. He was quite generous to give me that gap. But I think had he stayed inside, then there would have been something that maybe opened, you know, towards lane 2 or 3 and at least get me in the top 2. But yeah, it was sort of a perfect storm, I suppose, at that stage. And yeah, one of these rare days where it just goes exactly to plan.
Yeah, because, you know, I watched the highlights of the race, and at around 200, 150 to go, you're in the inside rail. There's 6 guys, the 6 that I named. There's Josh and Jake at the front. There's Charlie beside you, and then there's Chris O'Hare and James West behind yourself and Charlie.
Yeah.
At any point, were you slightly panicking, or were you quite calm in that storm?
Weirdly calm, because I felt good. I don't know why I was so calm, but I just felt that you just get the sense sometimes when you're racing. I had Charlie on my right, who's sometimes you can tell when he's starting to panic and his form's starting to go a little bit, but he was in such good form that season. I wasn't taking anything for granted. Mm-hmm. So you can sort of sense him fading a little bit. You can feel Jake coming on strong. But I don't know, that a little more than 100 to go. I just thought, if I get a sniff of a gap here, I'm going to win. And you know, sure enough, I did. But yeah, I think I should have been more panicked. But that's kind of, when you get to that point in a race, the worst thing you can do is try harder and try and run faster. Sometimes the better thing to do is completely relax into the last 100. It's sort of counterintuitive. You just have to, you know, not stiffen up, not try and sprint exactly what you think you should be. You've got to actually relax into the last 100 and just kind of, you know, let your legs tick over. You're not going to get any extra speed just by trying harder. You've got to actually not panic. Is the only way to do it. And yeah, as I said, I was maybe a bit too relaxed going into that 100, but only because I felt so good. And yeah, as I said, panicking would have meant that I probably don't get into the top 2 there. If I'd tried to check back and go around, there was no chance running at that pace.
And feeling crossing the line, how did you feel?
It was, I remember just having, you know, an ear-to-ear smile. Like, I thought at that point, maybe, you know, because I go into these races with a bit of a different sort of mentality, where everything's kind of like, right, it's me against the world, whatever you want to call it. But I expected maybe when I finished to sort of feel all the emotions of last year and be in sort of retribution thing, but it wasn't that at all. It was just complete ear-to-ear smiles, and I saw my parents and my brother over in the back straight stand where they always sit, just sort of fist bumping and jumping, and that was all I needed. And my brother had a pint in his hand and he was just jumping in the air. Yeah, that's as good as it gets for me. So no, I was just full of just almost raw joy at that point. Just no feelings of bitterness whatsoever. It was just complete happiness that I was able to do that, because you as much as you think you're able to and you absolutely convince yourself that you're going to do this today, until you do it, it means nothing. So it's to have it vindicated as I was right this whole time, and that my supporters were right this whole time. It was special.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a little quote from what you said just after you on your Instagram, and it was, a little over a year ago, I promised that I wouldn't let the selectors have any say in whether I would or wouldn't be selected for major championships in the future. I guess I'm a man of my word. That's pretty cool, isn't it? To look back on that and think.
It was cool looking back, because that's exactly what I posted about a year to that point. I'm absolutely glad I was a man of my word in that case. But sometimes putting that out there, telling that to people, telling that to your friends, like, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let selectors interfere with my goals and my career goals and that kind of thing. It's just putting that out there sometimes is exactly what you need to keep yourself honest. And looking back, it was brilliant. We couldn't have been more perfect in terms of getting me mentally ready to do something like that.
Yeah, and then we move on to the sort of the peak of the pyramid. You're representing Great Britain at the World Championships in Doha. How was your experience there? 3 Scots all representing Great Britain over the 1500. How did that feel? Talk us through how it was to be part of that special team.
In the days leading up, it was a nightmare, to be honest. I was so nervous. I hadn't been that nervous since I was about 14. I just felt all of a sudden like I hadn't felt for a long time the pressure of living up to something, pressure of competing, pressure. A lot of good athletes in the UK had been left off that team, and I felt that I really needed to do myself justice. And in the days leading up, I was stupidly nervous, and I didn't need to be. It's kind of uncharacteristic for me, but sort of almost didn't enjoy it leading in. But after I got that first heat out of the way, after that always settles the nerves. It was just the best experience ever. And by the time that we competed in the 1500, the crowd was great. They'd gotten all sorts of fans, a lot of sort of immigrants that live in Qatar. A lot of them are from sort of African countries, Kenya and Ethiopia, and they were lining the back straight and absolutely getting it loud, as we'd say, and just making the place like absolutely fantastic atmosphere. They really set the bar high, actually. I mean, I don't know how well that came across on TV, but they were really brilliant, particularly in the back straight, and that just absolutely buoyed me in the stadium going in. It was just a fun experience. I switched off for 30 seconds or so just to look at the crowd and what was going on around me in that heat. And once I started racing, all the nerves sort of go away, and the race plans in the heat, the semis, were just to be sort of as efficient as possible. And I don't think I actually got off the rail the entire heat, semis, finals. The whole time I was just happened to be on the rail that whole time. It wasn't necessarily the plan. It's just the way it sort of came off, and I was just efficient as possible. And that it was the semi-final day that was really special, because I just felt brilliant. The nerves had gone. I was able to start enjoying things, and moving past people that no one would even compare me to in the sport. I think up until very recently, maybe, was just special. People moving past people like Philip Ingebrigtsen and Suleiman and what's his name? The Ugandan guy, Nanyondo. Anyway, and McSwain and people that run stupid times. I'd look back on years prior and think, oh, that's a stupid time. I don't think I'll ever get there. But I had a lot of confidence in myself at that point to be able to close as fast as these guys. And sure enough, came past them in the last 100 feeling good and looking to my left, and the only people that were in front of me were, Chariot and McCluffy, and just thinking, how the fuck have I found myself here? There was a moment afterwards in the semi-final, it's just like, you think you might get to that level, but when it actually happens and you look around and you're like, what? It's surreal. It doesn't even cut it. And then, going into the media zone afterwards, and I wasn't really talking to the reporters that were trying to ask me questions at first because I was too busy watching the other semi-final, because like you, I still get a huge kick out of watching Josh and Jake compete. Like, these guys have been pals of mine since I was really young. I mean, Jake, I was racing since I was 13 years old, and we've had our little rivalries at the Scottish schools. And we've been good friends ever since. And he was actually best pals with my cousin, so we go way back, to the point that we were good pals back as young teenagers. And Josh, a bit younger than me in terms of age groups, but know him well as well. He actually used to race my brother a lot. In fact, until recently, where I started getting 1 or 2 wins over Josh, my brother always gave me shit about the fact that he's got a win over him and I didn't, because I'd never really raced him when I was younger. And no, but watching these guys in the other semi-final, and just, I wasn't too tired from my semi, so I still had enough energy to be fist pumping when I saw them qualify. And it was surreal seeing them afterwards and giving them both a hug. I mean, as much as, you think that certain countries, people will be really together when they're at major championships. Sometimes it's not quite the case. I remember an Australian athlete come up and said, "Oh, you guys are really close, actually. It's really unusual. Like, usually there's sometimes there'll be a wee bit of a rift between the top guys because they have to race each other so much." But we've just been pals for ages, to the point that, there was no feelings of like competitiveness really as we were making our way through the rounds. We were just genuinely really pleased with each other and just give each other big hugs afterwards and cooled down together, and all just had this surreal feeling of shit, look how far we've come, like all sort of in disbelief. That was special, and it's not exaggerated in any way to say that I was, absolutely ecstatic to see them make the final as well. I mean, even though having Jake make the final would obviously make it tougher, I know how good he is, having Josh make the final obviously makes it tougher. I just, there was no selfishness in it at all. I wanted them to be there too, because as I said, we go back a long way. It's special.
And then you move into the final, and I'm guessing, did Callum Hawkins help pump the three of you guys up for the final in the 1500, and from racing the marathon that night, hitting the front against the Africans, almost looking to win it? You guys are like getting super pumped, part of GB, part of the Scottish boys are running amok, lads, and you're thinking, right boys, let's go out and do something special tonight.
Seriously, it was inspiring. I mean, ironically, I'd tried to stay up for Callum a wee bit because I was staying up later because my races were later. So generally I was going to bed later. That was part of the plan, was for my body clock to be shifted to later. So I tried to stay up as long as I could. And I watched I just about turned off at the point where Callum was actually starting to drift back a wee bit. Right. And there was like a big gap to the front. So when I woke up in the morning, people were saying, "Oh, did you hear how Callum got on last night?" And I was like, how did he get on? Shit, I haven't even checked this out. Oh shit, he was fourth. And then watched it back a bit later that day and saw how inspiring his sort of charge was, the late charge in the marathon was. And it was inspiring, as I said. And Callum's so down to earth. It's when you get these down to earth guys like Callum, who just, I've known for a while as well, and you see them do so well and put in such inspiring performances, and he's as tough as it gets. It absolutely, inspires you. He's someone I look up to in terms of his mentality towards the sport. He's just sort of, as I said, down to earth, but a different animal when he's competing. Yeah.
And were you satisfied with your result in the final? Social media.
No, definitely not. The way I'd come off that semi-final, I was genuinely, no matter how unrealistic it might seem from an outsider's perspective, I was genuinely, the goal was to get a medal, and I knew how tough that would be. I'm not naive enough to think that I was just going to beat guys like McCluffy and Co. And Chariot. made it a race that, you know, you could say doesn't suit me exactly because it was so strength-based. It was so hard from the front. But I was completely ready for that sort of psychologically. That was what I knew was kind of going to happen. He was going to make it hard from the front, but I just don't know whether it was tiredness from maybe having 3 rounds. It was the first time doing that. I don't think so, but I think honestly, I think I'd got myself so wrapped up in trying to get a medal that I went with it, or at least tried to the first sort of 400 to 800 meters. You know, I went through in 55 for 400, which I'd never done before. I mean, that's, you know, not pretty much on world record pace, so not far off it. And I just wasn't ready to do that. I wasn't strong enough to do that. Cherry obviously was. The race plan suited him, and it strung it out. And you know, I was still actually, believe it or not, there with about 200 to go, but I was bluffing by that point. The wheels had already come off, and I was just swimming trying to get to the line. And you know, I was on for, you know, probably about 333, 334 with 200 or 300 to go. But I was, yeah, as I said, I was just trying to bluff, trying to make it anywhere close to the leaders because I was trying not to give up on that sort of medal chance, and completely blew up with 200 to go. But I don't regret going with it at all, really. I mean, if I'd had it back and I'd tried to place higher, sure, I would have hung back about where Lewandowski did or where Josh did and play it a bit smarter, come through conservatively, and then try and pick through towards the end. But I don't really regret the decisions I made because I thought that would give me a better chance to win a medal if I was on the rail, you know, in the top half of the field. That was the plan, and you know, I couldn't cope with it physically. I just wasn't quite ready strength-wise, but that's been a big focus of this year, is getting stronger to be able to cope with that, because I can guarantee that Chariot's not going to go away anytime soon. He's got a winning formula. He's going to keep applying it. Mm-hmm. And I need to be ready to do that. I mean, you saw even in the heats in the semi-finals, it was 3:36 both rounds just to get advanced, mm-hmm. Which is quicker than it usually is in rounds, just even to get in on time. So it's going to be a strength-based game these days. I don't think there's going to be many sort of 350 races like Centrowitz won in Rio, which perhaps suits my style of racing better. But it's going to be something I'm just going to need to work on, and it's something that comes slowly, the sort of aerobic side of things. But it's been a big focus of this year, and I'm certainly making inroads at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm just cognizant of time, so I don't want to keep you any longer than we have, because I know you're a busy man and you've got training to do, strength work to do, and all that sort of fun stuff. But I just want to say, like, it's been super inspiring just to have you come on and share your experiences, and really, you're educating myself as well as the listeners on the podcast, and I'm sure people are going to be listening to this and replaying it and bits, so they want to listen over again. So like I'm super happy for you to have taken the time to come on to the podcast. Last wee bit, I've got a wee quiz time that I do, just quick answers as fast as you can, couple of questions, and then that'll be us. So
sounds good.
Favourite food?
Pizza, without a doubt.
Favourite running shoes?
The Nike Vomero. It's been my go-to for years.
Favourite place to run?
There was some amazing, spectacular scenery in Bellinzona, Switzerland. That's been my favourite place to run at the meet there. That was just stunning. It was almost distracting having the scenery in the background when you were racing. It was that stunning. Yeah, Bellinzona, Switzerland.
Favourite to listen to whilst running?
Favourite what to listen to? Music?
Yeah, music or artist.
I mean, if it's pre-race, it'll be something like old school hip hop to Biggie Small or something like that. But if it's just normal day-to-day runs, I'd say a band like Kasabian.
Right. Favourite movie?
I had Lord of the Rings trilogy.
What shots or half tights?
Half tights always, any session, any race.
Favourite origin of coffee?
I'm not as much of a coffee guy, to be honest. I'm not good to ask on this. I mean, I like a good sort of Italian espresso, I suppose, if I'm going to go for one, so that.
Favourite athlete? Could be football or Formula, whatever. Favourite athlete?
For me, it's always between Chris Hoy and Andy Murray, and I go back and forth between the two, but they're the two that have inspired me the most as a kid.
Yeah. Favourite book?
I just finished a brilliant one actually called American Dirt. I don't know if it's my favourite, but it's just the one that's come on the top of my head just now. American Dirt is really worth a read.
Favourite TV series?
Breaking Bad is first comes to mind. Maybe the favourite all time though is, I don't know if you've seen The People versus O.J. Simpson. It's just one season. It's just a sort of docu-drama, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that is all the questions I have for you, Neil. You've answered them brilliantly. Good man. Thank you so much for coming on board, and I'll hopefully be seeing you racing soon.
Yeah, I hope so. My pleasure, Sean. It's been fun. I like, going over the years and starting getting perspective, starting to look back on things. It's good fun. So thanks very much for having me on.
No problem. I'll see you.